Okay. All right, so I plan to make it pretty brief. I just want to discuss top 5 questions that first-time home sellers tend to ask and just give kind of my response to them, and to also hopefully give you a couple of tips and tricks. So even if you're not ready to sell your house quite yet, you have um, some things in your pocket ready to go when you do decide to list. So we're really just going to talk mainly about the top 5 questions that I get when home sellers are asking questions about selling their house. Also, just any tips and tricks along the way. For being in this for about 5 years now, I have a few little tricks up my sleeve that are helpful, so we'll talk about those. Then I'll just go through some current market stats just because I feel like everybody wants to know what the market's doing these days, so I'll go through that. And then finally, at the end, I'll leave a Q&A. There is a little chat on the side of the screen, so if you do have a question or comment, just chat it in the comments, and then I'll be sure to answer it at the very end. Okay, so just a quick little bit about me. I am a realtor currently at Windermere. And I spent 9 years in education. I have my master's in school counseling. And I transitioned into being a realtor about 5 years ago. And I love it. I still get to help people, just kind of in a different capacity, which is really exciting for me. So it's fun. So let's get into the questions and just get started. Top 5 questions that home sellers ask. I think the first one is definitely, when is the best time to list my house? I get this question more than any other question, hands down. And the short answer really is that there's not a perfect time. There's just different conditions and different things to consider when you want to list your house. And so spring season tends to have a lot more buyers, and everyone thinks that you have to wait to list your house until spring. But the flip side to that is actually that you have a lot more competition. So a lot of other people are also waiting to sell their house in the spring. And so buyers typically have more to choose from. And so that could be a good or bad thing for you, depending on the condition of your house and kind of location and stuff like that. I think one thing to be mindful of is holidays. So a lot of times holiday weekends tend to just have less buyers in town. So I usually tell my clients to try to avoid like 4th of July, Memorial Day in a normal year. And then definitely like the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's timeframe is definitely the slowest time of year. But if you have to list your house and you have to move, you have to move, these holidays aren't going to make that big of a difference. But I do think it's just something to be mindful of. Especially if you're holding an open house, you might have a little less activity at an open house if you're holding it on a holiday weekend. Because a lot of people, at least in Utah, tend to get out of town for the weekend and go camping or go, somewhere else. So I would say just to kind of be mindful of the holidays. And then the other thing is really kind of just a kind of current market stat right now is that we have less than 2 months worth of inventory right now. And what that means in a healthy markets have about 6 months worth of inventory, which means if there were no more new sellers today, what's on the market would be able to house people for the next 6 months. So over the next 6 months, there'd be enough inventory that buyers could buy houses and you would be fine. Right now, the last stat that I saw was that Salt Lake is at a 1.7 month inventory, which definitely then flips it over into a seller's market. Which is good if you're a seller. It's to have it be a seller's market. You can be a little bit more choosy on your terms. If you get multiple offers, you can definitely kind of pick and choose your terms and kind of dictate price and things like that. So inventory is low, which is a good thing, but unfortunately right now for buyers, it's so low that where buyers are still having a hard time even though COVID's going on and all that. So that's a little bit about best time to buy a house. The next question that I get are kind of what are just little things that I can do to kind of help my value or help my perceived value of the house. And when I come through, so typically what I do is I come through the house and I like to just do a walk through the house before we talk numbers or anything. And when I do, I ask the sellers always, like, is there anything you've been meaning to fix? And if there is, like I had clients recently, they're like, oh yeah, we have a couple of little like holes that we patched in the wall, but we never painted. Should we paint? Yes. Basically, my rule of thumb is if there's something that you've been meaning to do, you should do it, because most likely if the buyer sees that there's a wall that's not patched, they're going to start thinking, well, if they didn't patch this wall, what other shortcuts or what other things are happening behind the scenes that I can't see that the seller hasn't done? Is there any other deferred maintenance on the house? So it's always good to fix up little things that you've been meaning to fix. And then I would definitely say to deep clean your home. And by deep clean, I mean wipe your baseboards, really do a good, thorough cleaning of the house. It makes a huge difference when buyers walk through. Buyers obviously don't want to walk through a home that's going to be dirty, because it's going to be the same mindset as if you don't fix anything, like, oh, they're not cleaning their house, so they must be neglecting it. They kind of go from like one extreme to the other. And so do a deep clean, hire a cleaner if you don't want to do it yourself. But if you have blinds, clean your blinds. I know it's awful and not fun to clean blinds, but you want to go through and make sure that there's not dust, or if you have dogs, there's dogs or cat hair or anything like that. Because if buyers are seeing that, they're going to think, oh, well, maybe there's some other deferred maintenance things. My third tip is definitely wash the windows, both inside and out. So if you have a ladder, can do it yourself, great. I also would recommend, if you don't have time to have window washers come, washing the windows makes a huge difference. It makes the light in the house just seem so much brighter, and it gives the appearance that everything is so much cleaner. I can't tell you how many times that I have clients that really want good natural light in the house, and that's like one of their top priorities. And then when we're going through houses, sometimes they're seeing that there's maybe the sprinkler was hitting the water or the window, or, you know, they're just dirty from rain and dust and whatever. It makes a difference, and it just makes the house kind of not feel as clean. So that's one tip that I always will kind of pull out, and just, it's a really easy thing you can do. You don't have to be handy to do it, but it makes a big difference. The other thing that I would say is to pull weeds. So if you have a garden or if you have landscaping in the front of your house, pull all the weeds and make the house look really nice. Because what's going to happen is the buyer is going to come to the house and they're going to start assessing of like, all right, what things am I going to need to do? And if they see that there's a bunch of weeds and there's vines that are overgrowing on your house or anything like that, they're going to think, oh, like that's going to be their focus. So they're going to go, oh, like, man, I don't know, maybe this yard is just too much for me, because it looks like I'm going to have to be spending my weekends pulling weeds and doing stuff like that. Buyers almost always go into a house with kind of it's not a negative mindset, but they're always looking for things that they're going to have to fix or things that are wrong with the house. And so pulling weeds and just making your yard look really nice kind of just skips over that thought for them, because it just looks really nice and they're not even thinking, oh, I'm going to have to pull all these weeds and do all this stuff. And overall, just make your yard look really nice. I think putting some flowers in your entryway or like on your little front steps or something like that really goes a long way to just kind of make the house feel really warm and welcoming when buyers are coming through. And then the last one is to declutter. If you are moving out of your house because it's too small and you want to move into a new house and your closets are just jam-packed with clothes, when the buyer opens up that door and looks in the closet, they're going to go, oh, these closets are small. It's just a natural reaction. And so you'll want to, if you have to take boxes and put them downstairs in your basement, or if you have to get a little storage unit to just declutter, and it might not even be clutter, but just to like make it seem a little bit more minimal, it really goes a long way. And I always tell people to, even in their closets, like if you have built-ins in your closet, just organize them and make them look nice. Don't have stuff just thrown everywhere. Same with a pantry. If you have a pantry, just kind of organize it and make it look nice. Again, because you just want the buyer to think that everything is just nice and orderly and that the house has really been taken care of, even though it may not really matter if the house is taken care of if the pantry is in order, but that's kind of the way that the buyer thinks. So figuring out price is an interesting one. This is kind of the third, I would say, biggest question that we get. And it really depends on so many things. And honestly, that's why I really like to go and walk through a house first. Some agents will come through and they'll have a price in mind and like try to do a hard sell at the end. Personally, I just don't think that that's the right way to do it. I think you should walk through the house and get to know the house and know the neighborhood and know what improvements the home seller has made, and really get a good feel on the condition of the home, because it really makes a big difference when you're pricing a home. And so I think pricing kind of depends on several factors. First, it definitely depends on size. If the house is really small, your price per square foot is going to be most likely higher, which is okay. But if you have 2 bedrooms instead of 3 bedrooms, that might be a deterring factor for some, families or something that are moving in, because they might need 3 bedrooms. And so size really is important when deciding on price. So bedrooms, bathrooms are important. A lot of buyers like to have at least 1.5 baths. And by 1.5 baths, I mean a half bath is basically just a toilet and a sink. A full bath is the tub, the sink, and the toilet. And then a 3/4 is with a shower instead of a tub. So just a little FYI there. But definitely, so you want to look at the style of the home as well. I always recommend, if the house is vacant, to definitely do some staging on it, because I think it really goes a long way, again, to just help with the buyer's imagination and like, oh, I could put a couch here. Oh, I could imagine myself living in this space. Oh, a queen size bed fits in this room. So doing some staging really does help. And if you're not staging, if you're living in the house while you're selling it, just make sure that the style is fairly neutral. I wouldn't say another question I get is, should we take down all of our family photos? My answer is always, it depends. If there are a ton of family photos everywhere where it's like a little overwhelming, it might be a little overwhelming for buyers, I would probably say to pare it down. If there's a few family photos around, I would say to leave them up, because a lot of times buyers actually feel a connection with you, as long as you're okay with it. Buyers feel a connection with you and like, oh, this is such a cute family, or oh, look, they have a son just like we have a son, or whatever. And so it helps make a connection with the buyer. And so styling wise, I always say to leave stuff up. One thing I would recommend to do, if you're comfortable with it, is if there's any religious stuff in the house. That is one thing that sometimes can be polarizing for people. And so depending on how you feel about it, if you are totally proud and want to keep that stuff up, by all means do. Don't let me tell you what to do. But if not, I would say just take it down for when we're going to sell, and just pack it up, because you'll probably want to put it up in the next house anyways. So The next thing is location. If you are on a busy street, or if you're kind of out of the way from the freeway, or you're, just a little further away, location can definitely impact how I price a home. The other thing is if you have neighbors that are like hoarders and have a ton of stuff, that also could potentially influence pricing on a home. And so location really comes into factor. Another thing would be if you live in a condo and there's 5 other condos for sale in your building, and you're, selling yours at the same time, buyers will start to think, oh, is there something going on with that HOA? Is there something going on like development wise that we don't know about? And so that could kind of play into location as well. And then last but not least is condition. So condition is basically how well kept your house is. So obviously, like I said in the last slide, you're really going to want to make sure that you're cleaning up and organizing stuff and just making it look really nice and presentable. When we're doing showings, if sellers are okay with it, I always tell them, turn on a little music, put on maybe light a candle, or light one of those little warmer thing, the wax warmer things. Don't make it so overpowering that that's the first thing the buyer notices, but try to make it feel like home. So basically get your house ready as if you were going to have some friends come over and hang out with you. And then another question is what is fair market value? And so fair market value is really whatever a willing and able buyer is willing to pay for your house. And that really dramatically, it depends on these factors, but it also depends on what the market's doing. And so currently the market is definitely in the seller's market right now. And so fair market value, you can push that a little bit right now. But you want to be careful, because you don't want to price your house so high that buyers are going to think that it's high, and not even going to want to come and see it. They're going to basically cross it off before they even get a chance to see it. And in a seller's market, buyers tend to think that their home, whatever house they're going to decide to buy, is going to be they're going to have to pay more for it. So they will, if they see a house for $350, they're going to think they'll probably have to pay $360, $365 for it right now, just because the market is so crazy and competitive. And so if you're pricing your house at $365, and then they're in the buyer's mind, they're going, oh, well, actually, it's probably going to be closer to $375, $380. That's just too much. And so you really want to kind of take into consideration all those things. And so I like to price houses at fair market value, which is kind of right at what the market is. And then almost always, at least in a seller's market, almost always you'll get more activity on the house. And then you'll be able to most likely have multiple offers and be able to kind of pick and choose what offer you like and what terms you like and stuff like that. So I'm always of the kind of the camp to price it not low, but at what fair market value is. And then the price will naturally rise based on the buyers out there. And psychologically, I think for buyers, if there's multiple offers on a home and they're bidding, obviously they don't want to go into a bidding war, but they feel a little bit more if they really want the house, they're going to get a little bit more competitive about it, instead of pricing it so high and then the buyers basically thinking it's already high and then kind of having buyer's remorse on it. So that's my 2 cents there. And the last one is Zillow isn't always right. So in Utah, this is another question that I get all the time. The Zestimates are not accurate. So Utah is a non-disclosure state, which means that our final sales prices on homes don't actually get disclosed to the public. And so Zillow takes guesses, and in a lot of other markets, the Zestimate is probably pretty accurate. But in our market here in Salt Lake, it's not always accurate. And so the Zestimate is a question that I get all the time. So I just wanted to address it under price because, like I said, it doesn't always, it's not always accurate. Sometimes it's close if a bunch of people are disclosing on Zillow what the price is, but most of the time it's off by at least a couple percent. Okay. Next one is, what home improvement projects return the most money? And so I'll go through a couple that I think have really kind of high return on investment. So first is kitchen updates. Notice I said updates and not complete kitchen remodels, but little updates and little things that you can do. So maybe you can change the handles on your cabinets, the pulls on your cabinets to be a little bit more modern. Maybe they're a little dated. Maybe if you have wood cabinets, it's not fun, but maybe you could paint the wood cabinets a different color to kind of match kind of the style that's going on right now. Maybe it's just as simple. I had some sellers that just put in a new countertop. Their old countertop was this like green color, and it was just not very appealing to buyers. They spent a couple $100. They got a new countertop, and it made a world of difference. They didn't even do any kind of like stone. They just did the like, of course now I'm going to forget what it's called, but why can't I think what it's called? Anyways, they didn't do any kind of stone. They just did the man-made stuff, and it totally changed the look of the kitchen. So something to think about for kitchen updates. A kitchen update could also be maybe have a really old fridge that needs to be updated. If you can get some use out of it before you sell, go ahead and get a new fridge or get a new stove or whatever. The little things, if you can get some use out of them before you sell, I would say to definitely do that for appliances. Next is bathroom updates. Cosmetic upgrades here are also pretty easy. Doing a new vanity, putting in a new light fixture, change your shower curtain. If you have a shower curtain, shower curtains are notoriously dingy when we're looking through houses. And so that's just an easy thing to do that really does make a huge difference. I would even say like if you have a cute little pulls on your vanity or the toilet paper holder or your towel rack or anything like that, if you put a little shelf in, just little things to kind of update the bathroom and make it feel like it's kind of, in this century. Next is outdoor space and landscaping. This one actually has a huge buyers don't always think that they're looking for some great outdoor space, but then they start looking at houses, and almost always I'll notice a trend of them kind of really focusing on the backyard of a house. If this is a condo, then they are definitely looking if there's a balcony, and I think a balcony, you could do the same thing. Put a little rug and a chair, maybe some lights, and just make it really create a space outdoors. If your deck is really old, paint the deck, plant some trees or plant some flowers around just to make it feel really welcoming. And it really goes a long way for buyers because they almost always, when I'm initially talking with them, don't really mention outdoor space that much. And then when we start looking at houses, inevitably they will kind of focus in on the outdoor space. Entryway upgrades is another thing. So this one is a little bit of a pet peeve for me. So update your doors. And by doors, it could even mean just update your lock. If you have a hard time locking your house as is right now, go and buy a new lock before you list it. It sets the tone when we're trying to get into a house and the buyer's behind me and I'm trying to open up the door and you got to lift and twist and pull and push and whatever. The buyer immediately is like starts thinking, oh, there's stuff that's wrong with this house because the door isn't working and we haven't even gotten in the house yet. And so their mindset is immediately going to what else is wrong with the house instead of just enjoying the house for as it is. So it could be, if your front door isn't great as is, it could be painting it. Like I said, new hardware, add new house numbers. If you have some lights up there that are a little dated, add some new light sconces. Anything like that goes a really long way, because you, again, want the buyer to feel really warm and welcome when they're coming and approaching the house. And you want to set the tone for you want them to enjoy the house instead of looking for everything that's wrong with it. Last but not least is energy efficiency and technology. This is another one, along with the outdoor space, that buyers don't usually mention when we're first talking about what things are really important to them, but they definitely really appreciate them. And I think it goes a long way. So install a Nest. If you need to add more insulation in your house to make it more energy efficient, Dominion Energy actually has a rebate that you can do and get some of that money back. So add some extra insulation. It'll save you on energy costs anyways. If there's older windows, there's also a rebate for older windows, so you can totally take advantage of that. I think that's also through Dominion. Ring doorbells. MyQ for garage doors is something that when I tell buyers that that's a thing, they get super excited about. So MyQ is actually just an app on your phone that connects to your garage door, so you can tell if you closed your garage door or if your garage door is open and how long it's been open or closed for, and then you can automatically open and close it on the app. I have a couple of clients, that myself included, that leave their garage door open and totally forget when they leave the house. And it's really nice to have the app to just go and do that. And so there's just a little plugin that goes onto your automatic garage door opener. And then you just download the app, and it's a great little piece of technology for super cheap. So how to coordinate if you're planning on selling your house and buying a new house, there's usually a little bit of a gap. A lot of times sellers will need the money from that house that they're selling to purchase the new house. And so the first step is definitely to just talk with a lender first and see if you can qualify without the contingency that you have to sell this other home. And I've done it a couple of different ways depending on different situations, but it definitely can be done, and it shouldn't scare you away. But one thing to do would be to sell your house first and then close on that house and basically move into temporary housing if you have family that you can move in with, or friends, or even just rent an Airbnb for a little bit of time. That way, when you go to buy the house, you don't have to put in the contingency that you have a house to sell. You just have that money readily available. Another thing to do is, if you can qualify, obviously you could just buy the house first and then let your realtor know, and they can coordinate the dates. So basically you can move out of one and move into the other. It can be done, despite what some people will tell you. And what else did I have for this one? I think the other biggest one is just to, you can also get a free lease back. And so what that is if you're selling your house, let's say you're selling your house and you're due to close at the end of June, but you're not actually moving into your other house until middle of July. What you can do is a lease back, and this is something that's really nice right now with it being a seller's market, is you can actually coordinate a lease back of your house. So technically you would be leasing it from the new buyer of the house. You would still keep utilities and everything in your name, but it allows you to basically not have to move twice. And so in doing it this way, you could potentially get your house for sale, get it under contract, and then kind of be casually looking and put in an offer and then kind of get the ball rolling that way, and then stay in your house for a little bit longer. The lease back is up to 60 days here in Utah. And if it's a seller's market like it is right now, you can definitely try to get a free lease back, where you're not actually paying any rent. The buyer just really, really wants the house. And in order, if it's a multiple offer situation, in order for them to get the house, they will give you a free lease back for a little bit. So just another thing to think about in terms of coordinating a sale and a new purchase. But it totally can be done. I've done it a lot of times, and it just takes a little extra planning and just really good communication with everybody to make sure it gets done. Okay. Just wrapping up real quick, I wanted to talk about current market stats for Salt Lake and kind of what's going on right now in the market. So this is just a quick graph showing sales in April of 2019 and April of 2020, and same with May. We can definitely, there's no doubt about it that we are seeing less sales right now. I think the main misconception is that because people are seeing less sales, that means that we're going into some kind of recession. I don't think that that's true at all. I think really what's happening right now is there's a lack of inventory, like we talked about in the very beginning. So just to give you an idea, I checked numbers for today, and today there were 104 new listings in Salt Lake County. Last year at this time, there were 176. So we're definitely just really having a hard time with inventory right now, which in turn is actually what is kind of affecting the sales right now, just because there isn't a ton of inventory. And I totally get it. A lot of people are taking extra precautions with COVID, and I think they should be. And so that's really how I think people are not wanting to sell right now. Also, refi rates were really low this year before COVID hit. And so I think a lot of people also refied their house right now. So they at least have 6 months before they can turn around and sell it. So, and this is basically for any homes right now that are under 650. We're seeing a little bit more inventory in the higher price points right now, but the sweet spot for Salt Lake is usually 650 or under, and inventory is just super low right now. So that is it. I'm wondering if there's any questions. I'm going to just click over and see if there's anything going on in the chat. Okay. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. This has actually been really helpful, so thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
I have 2 children and they're relatively smaller. Is there any recommendations for like trying to keep everything tidy when showing a house? Like, is there kind of a rule with kids or?
Yeah, I tell people, so the first weekend is really important. And so I tell people, especially if they have kids, and this also goes for like pets, if you have dogs or cats or anything like that, that first weekend on the market is usually really, really important. So I usually prefer to list houses on Thursdays because A, it doesn't interrupt your entire week in terms of getting the house ready and having to work every day. And B, people are really starting to prep for the weekend and starting to look for open houses. And so what I tend to tell people, if it's possible, is to pack up the kids, pack up the pets, and go on a little vacation for that weekend. If you have, some family that lives close by, go and hang out there for the weekend. That way you're only having to clean the house once and keep everything in order once. And really that first weekend is the really important part anyways. And so use it as an opportunity to just kind of relax and not have to worry about everything, cleaning the house and getting everything perfect. And it's also nice because then you can kind of step away and you're not immediately focused on like how many people have been through the house and why haven't we gotten an offer yet. If you go and just take the weekend to do that, and just go somewhere or use it as an opportunity to take a little trip, it usually we can get the house sold if it's priced right and it has good location and condition, so that it will sell pretty quickly. If for whatever reason it doesn't sell right away, especially with COVID right now, a lot of people are doing kind of scheduled showing times. And so the house will be open from 5 to 7 certain days or times. You want to make the house available for people and make it not inconvenient to see it. But if you do have little ones or pets that just make it really next to impossible to always keep perfectly clean, I would suggest doing some kind of allotment of time, that so you're not having to clean for before every single showing, and it just gets really daunting. So, okay, any other questions?
Yep, I have just a couple more. I don't want to take all the questions away from Jason if he has any, but um, you noted that when it's a seller's market and you have multiple offers,
Mm-hmm.
is there kind of like a step to follow when you have like one offer submitted and then maybe you have a showing in 2 or 3 days? Like, is there a proper time frame to kind of string people along?
Yeah, so what I usually tend to do, and this kind of goes back to the weekend thing, what I tend to do is I will have, I will initially say in the showing remarks that you'll want to all offers to me be submitted by Monday at 5 or something like that. And so it kind of gives people a time frame when they're starting off, and it really kind of helps if they're thinking about it, kind of motivate them to go and put in an offer. If not, what I do, if we don't get any offers over the weekend, the second that I keep a log of everyone that has seen the house. And the second that we have an offer, or have, you know, we think we're going to get an offer, I basically do an all call with every agent and let them know, hey, I think we're receiving an offer. We have an offer. If you have any interest, I'm just letting you know right now that, we have a response time of, maybe tomorrow at 5 or something like that. So just let me know if your clients are interested. And that usually helps, because sometimes people will see it and then they think they have some time to think it over. But unfortunately, in the seller's market, there's usually not a ton of time to think things over. So it kind of helps just push people along.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more, and it goes around actually finding a realtor.
Yeah.
It seems like you would be a great realtor to work with, but unfortunately, I'm not in the Salt Lake area. So if I were, like, what are some things that I should look for in a realtor? I mean, if I'm going to be selling my house, it's a
Totally.
big part of my livelihood. I don't want to just have someone come in and just filter people through and take the first offer and move on.
Yeah. So with finding a realtor, it's really important to interview a couple of them. I know it's kind of a pain to interview and, takes a little bit of time, but you want to find someone that seems to make a good connection with you and seems to really have your best interest at heart. And so a couple of things that I always say are really what a realtor's job is to do is, number one, is to enhance the value of your home. So all the tips that I gave you, when I come through and do a walkthrough before we list, I will give you little tips and tricks, because I'm trying to get the most money for your house. And so I will obviously enhance the value of your home. I want to get you the most exposure in the market. And so another thing is talking to the realtor about what they do. Do they just put the house on the MLS and then, it syndicates to Zillow and wherever, Realtor and things like that? Like, what else are they doing to promote your home? because you want it to be out there for everyone. So if anyone, even if they're looking out of town or whatever, that they, can see your house and it's not just on Zillow. So that's one thing. And then you really want them to be the best negotiators. So talk to them about negotiating strategies and like what negotiations situations have they been in and how have they fared. Because really negotiation it's a fine line, it's a dance. And if you get somebody that's really hard-nosed and, no, we're doing it this way and that's it, I've typically found that that's not usually super helpful for the transaction. So you want someone that's like willing to, obviously advocate for you and stand up for you, but also that isn't one extreme or the other. And then really you want them to just be managing your transaction and communicating with you. So talk to them about their communication preferences and how they like to communicate, how, read reviews on realtors and see what people have to say about them. And you can also just kind of reach out to me. I do have some connections throughout the States. And so if I know of anyone, I'm happy to kind of pass them along. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me this whole time. And I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, my contact info is right there. So feel free to reach out and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.